In this video, we'll study about the histology of the skin. The skin forms the external covering of the body and it is the largest organ which constitute 15 to 20% of the total body mass. So when you see the types of the skin, there are two types of skin. One is thin or hairy skin. In this type, the epidermis is very thin and it contains hair and it is found in all parts of the body except the palm and the sole. Next type is the thick or glabrous skin. In this type of skin, the epidermis is very thick with the thick layer of stratum corneum and it is found in the palms of the hands and soles of the feet and it has no hair. Next we'll see the structure of the skin. The skin consists of two layers, a superficial layer which is called as epidermis and it is made up of stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Then you have the deeper layer, the dermis, which is made up of connective tissue. The dermis rests on the subcutaneous tissue and this is sometimes described as the third layer of the skin, which is the subcutis. In section through the skin, the line of junction between the epidermis and the dermis is not straight but it is wavy because of the presence of numerous finger-like projections of the dermis upward into the epidermis. So these projections are called as dermal papillae. The downward projections of the epidermis in the interval between the dermal papillae, which are known as the epidermal papillae. So when you see the surface of the epidermis, it is marked by elevation and depressions. So these are most prominent on the palms and the ventral surfaces of the fingers and on the corresponding surfaces of the feet. Here, the elevation forms the characteristic epidermal ridges. So these are called as epidermal ridges. This is called as epidermal papillae. And this is dermal papillae. So the elevation forms a characteristic epidermal ridges which are also called as the rete ridges and these are responsible for highly specific fingerprint of each person's. This is a histological picture of a thick skin under higher magnification. So here you can see this is the epidermis. This whole layer is the epidermis. So this epidermis consists of stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So when you see the layers of the epidermis, first is the stratum basale. So this is the base layer. So this is the stratum basale. So it is the deepest layer or the basal layer of the epidermis and it is made up of a single layer of columnar cells that rest on the basal lamina. The basal layer contains stem cells that undergo mitosis to give off cells which are known as the keratinocytes. The keratinocytes forms the more superficial layer of the epidermis. The basal layer is therefore it is called as the germinal layer which is called as the stratum germinativum. Next layer is the stratum spinosum. So this is the stratum spinosum. So the stratum spinosum is the next layer above the basal layer. The stratum spinosum consists of several layers of polygonal cells and this layer is also known as Malpighian layer. The cells of this layer are attached to one another by numerous desmosome and during routine preparation of the tissue for sectioning, the cells often retract from each other except at the desmosome. As a result, the cells appear to have a number of spines. This is a reason for calling this layer as the stratum spinosum. For the same reason, the keratinocyte of this layer are also called as the prickle cells. The cytoplasm of the cell in the stratum spinosum is permeated with the fibrils, which are made up of bundles of keratin filaments. The fibrils are attached to the cell wall at the desmosomes. Some mitosis may be seen in the deeper cells of the stratum spinosum. Because of this fact, the stratum spinosum is included along with the basal cell layer in the germinative zone of the epidermis. The next layer is the stratum granulosum. So overlying the stratum spinosum, there are 1 to 5 layers of flattened cells that are characterized by the presence of deeply stained granules in their cytoplasm. These cells constitute the stratum granulosum. The granules in them consist of protein which are known as the keratohyalin, which are the precursors of keratin. The nuclei of the cell in this layer are condensed and dark staining. With electron microscope, it is seen in the cells of this layer, the keratin filaments are more numerous and are arranged in the form of thick layer. The next layer is the stratum lucidum. Superficial to the stratum granulosum, you have the stratum lucidum. The lucid is clear. So this layer is so called because it appears homogeneous and the cell boundaries are extremely indistinct. The traces of flattened nuclei are seen in some cells. The superficial layer is the stratum corneum. It is the most superficial layer of the epidermis, and this layer is acellular and it is made up of flattened scale-like element which is squamous, which contain keratin filament embedded in protein. The squamous are held together by a glue-like material which contains lipid and carbohydrates. The presence of lipid makes this layer highly resistant to permeation by water. The thickness of the stratum corneum is greatest where the skin is exposed to maximal friction, example on the palms and the sole. The superficial layers of the epidermis are being constantly shed off and they are replaced by the proliferation of the cells from the deeper layer. The stratum corneum, the stratum lucidum, the stratum granulosum. So these three layers, they form a zone of keratinization, or it is also known as cornified zone, whereas the stratum spinosum and the stratum basale are known as the stratum germinativum. The stratum granulosum and the stratum lucidum are well formed only in thick non-hairy skin, that is example on the palm. They are usually absent in thin hairy skin. Next we'll see the pathological correlation. First is the basal cell carcinoma. It affects the basal cells of stratum basale. Typically, the basal cell carcinoma is locally invasive, slow growing tumor of middle age that rarely metastases. It occurs exclusively on the hairy skin. The most common location, that is about 90%, being on the face, usually above a line from the lobe of a ear to the corner of the mouth. Next we'll see about the squamous cell carcinoma. It affects the squamous cells of the stratum spinosum. The squamous cell carcinoma may arise in any part of the skin and the mucous membrane lined by the squamous epithelium, but it is more likely to occur on sun-exposed part in older people. Although the squamous carcinoma can occur anywhere on the skin, most common locations are the face, the pinna of the ear, the back of the hands, the mucocutaneous junctions such as lips, anal canal and glans penis. The cutaneous squamous carcinoma arising in a pre-existing inflammatory and degenerative lesion has a higher incidence of developing metastasis. Next we'll see about the cells of the epidermis. The epidermis consists of two types of cells. One is keratinocytes, the other one is non-keratinocyte, which include the melanocyte, the dendritic cells of the Langerhans and the cells of the Merkel. First we'll see about the keratinocyte. The keratinocytes are the predominant cell types of the epidermis. They are formed from stem cells which are present in the basal layer. After entering the stratum spinosum, some keratinocyte may undergo further mitosis. Such cells are referred to as intermediate stem cells. Thereafter, the keratinocyte do not undergo further cell division. Next we'll see the essential step in the formation of keratin. The basal cells of the epidermis contain numerous intermediate filaments. So these are called as cytokeratin filaments or tonofibrils. As the basal cells move into the stratum spinosum, the protein forming the tonofibrils undergo changes that convert them to keratin filaments. When the epidermal cells reaches the stratum granulosum, they synthesize keratohyalin granules. These granules contain specialized protein which are rich in sulfur containing amino acid, example histidine and cysteine. The keratin consists of keratin filaments embedded in keratohyalin. The cells of the superficial layers of the stratum granulosum are packed with keratin. These cells die, leaving behind the keratin mass in the form of acellular layer of thin flakes. The cells in the granular layer also show membrane-bound circular granules that contain glycophospholipids. These granules are referred to as lamellated bodies or keratosomes. When these cells die, the material in these granules is released and acts as a glue that holds together the flakes of the keratin. The lipid content of this material makes the skin resistant to water. However, prolonged exposure to water causes the material to swell, and this is responsible for the altered appearance of the skin after prolonged exposure to water. The time elapsing between the formation of a keratinocyte in the basal layer of the epidermis and its shedding off from the surface of the epidermis is highly variable. It is influenced by many factors including skin thickness and the degree of friction on the surface. On the average, it is about 40 to 50 days. In some situations, it is seen that the flakes of keratin in the stratum corneum are arranged in regular columns, one stacked above the other. It is believed that localized area in the basal layer of the epidermis contain group of keratinocytes all derived from a single stem cell. It is also believed that all the cells in the epidermis overlying this region are derived from the same stem cell. Such group of cells are derived from a single stem cell and state in layers passing from the basal layer to the surface of the epidermis constitute epidermal proliferation units. One dendritic cell is present in close association with each such unit. Next we'll see about melanocyte. The melanocytes are derived from the melanoblasts that arise from the neural crest. These cells are responsible for melanin. They may be present among the cells of the germinative zone or at the junction of the epidermis and the dermis. Each melanocyte gives off many processes, each of which is applied to a cell of the germinative zone. The melanin granules formed in the melanocyte are transferred to the surrounding non-melanin producing cells through these processes. Because of the presence of processes, the melanocytes are also called as dendritic cells. Next we'll see about the melanin. The cells in the basal layer of the epidermis and the adjoining cells of the stratum spinosum contain a brown pigment which is called as melanin. The pigment is much more prominent in dark-skinned individuals. The melanin is derived from the amino acid tyrosine. The tyrosine is converted into dihydroxyphenylalanine, that is DOPA, that in turn converted into melanin. With the electron microscope, the melanin granules are seen to be membrane-bound organelles that contain pigment. These organelles are called melanosomes. The melanosomes bud off from the Golgi complex. They enter the dendrites of the melanocytes. At the end of the dendrites, the melanosomes are shed off from the cell and they are engulfed by neighboring keratinocyte. This is the manner in which most cells of the germinative zone acquire their pigment. The color of the skin is influenced by the amount of melanin present. It is also influenced by some other pigments present in the epidermis such as hemoglobin and oxyhemoglobin present in the blood circulating through the skin. The epidermis is sufficiently translucent for the color of the blood to show through, especially in light-skinned persons. That is why the skin becomes pale in anemia, blue when the oxygenation of the blood is insufficient. Next we'll see about the clinical correlation. First we'll see about the vitiligo. It is a common skin disease in which the melanocytes are destroyed due to an autoimmune reaction. This results in the depigmentation of the skin. The next condition we'll see is the nevocellular nevi. The pigmented nevi or moles are extremely common lesion of the skin of most individuals. They are often flat or slightly elevated lesion. Rarely they may be papillomatous or pedungulated. Most nevi appear in adolescence and in early adulthood due to the hormonal influence, but rarely may be present at birth. The next condition we'll see is the malignant melanoma. The malignant melanoma or melanocarcinoma arising from the melanocyte is one of the most rapidly spreading malignant tumor of the skin that can occur at all ages but is rare before puberty. The tumor spreads locally as well as to the distant sites by lymphatics and by blood. The etiology is unknown, but there is a role of excessive exposure of white skin to sunlight. Besides the skin, the melanomas may occur at various other sites such as oral and anogenital mucosa, esophagus, conjunctiva, orbit and leptomeninges. The common site on the skin are the trunk in men, legs in women. Other locations are face, soles, palm and nail beds. The next cells we'll see is the dendritic cells of Langerhans. Apart from the keratinocytes and the dendritic melanocytes, the stratum spinosum also contain other dendritic cells that are quite different in function from the melanocytes. So these are called as dendritic cells of Langerhans. These cells are also found in oral mucosa, vagina and thymus. These cells belong to mononuclear phagocyte system. The dendritic cells of the Langerhans originate in bone marrow. They are believed to play an important role in protecting the skin against viral and other infection. It is believed that the cells take up antigen in the skin and transport them to lymphoid tissue where the antigen stimulate T lymphocytes. Under electron microscope, the dendritic cells are seen to contain characteristic elongated vacuoles that have been named as Langerhans bodies or Birbach's granules or bodies. The content of these vacuoles are discharged to the outside of the cell through the cell membrane. The dendritic cells of the Langerhans also appear to play a role in controlling the rate of cell division in the epidermis. They increase in number in chronic skin disorders, particularly those resulting from allergy. The next cell we'll see is the cells of Merkel. The basal layer of the epidermis contains specialized sensory cells which are called as cells of Merkel, and sensory nerve endings are present in relation to these cells. To remember, the epidermis consists of keratinocyte, melanocyte, dendritic cells of Langerhans and Merkel cells. Next we'll see about the dermis. The dermis consists of two layers, papillary layer and then you have reticular layer. The papillary layer forms the superficial layer of the dermis and it includes a dense connective tissue of the dermal papilla. These papillae are best developed in the thick skin of the palms and the sole. Each papilla contains capillary loop. Some papillae contain tactile corpuscles. Then we'll see about the reticular layer. The reticular layer of the dermis is the deep layer of the dermis and consists mainly of thick bundles of collagen fibers. It also contains considerable number of elastic fibers. The intervals between the fiber bundle are usually occupied by adipose tissue. The dermis rests on superficial fascia through which it is attached to the deeper structures. Next we'll see the clinical correlation. The dermis contains considerable amount of elastic fibers. Atrophy of the elastic fibers occurs with age and it is responsible for loss of elasticity and wrinkling of the skin. The fiber bundles in the reticular layer of the dermis mostly lie parallel to one another. In the limbs, the predominant direction of the bundle is along the long axis of the limb, while on the trunk and the neck it is transverse. The line along which the bundle run are often called as cleavage line, as they represent the natural line along which the skin tends to split when penetrated. The cleavage lines are important to the surgeon as the incision in the direction of the line gave much less than those at right angle to them. If for any reason the skin in any region of the body is rapidly stretched, the fiber bundles in the dermis may rupture. The scar tissue is formed in the region and can be seen in the form of prominent white line. Such lines may be formed on the anterior abdominal wall during pregnancy and they are called as linea gravidarum. Next we'll see about the thick skin and thin skin. In the thin skin, if you see the presence of thin epidermis made up of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The stratum corneum is thin here. Then you can see the cut sections of the hair follicle and then you can see the cut sections of the sebaceous glands, sweat glands and then you can see the erector pili muscle. Whereas in the thick skin, the epidermis is thick and it is made up of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The stratum corneum in the thick skin is very thick. The hair follicle and the sebaceous glands are absent in dermis. The sweat glands are present in the dermis and it is found in the palms of the hand and soles of the feet. Next we'll see about the blood supply of the skin. The blood vessels of the skin are derived from number of arterial plexuses. The deepest plexus is present over the deep fascia. There is another plexus just below the dermis. This is called as retecutaneum or reticular plexus, and the third plexus is just below the level of the dermal papilla. So these plexuses is called as rete subpapillary and papillary plexus. The capillary loops arising from this plexus passes into each terminal papilla. The blood vessels do not penetrate into the epidermis. The epidermis derives nutrition entirely by diffusion from the capillaries in the dermal papilla. The veins from the dermal papilla drain into the plexus which is present in the dermis, that drains into the venous plexus lying on the deep fascia. A special feature of the blood supply of the skin is the presence of numerous arteriovenous anastomoses. So these regulate the blood flow through the capillary bed and thus helps in maintaining the body temperature. Next we'll see about the nerve supply. The skin is richly supplied with sensory nerve. Dense networks of nerves are seen in the superficial part of the dermis. The sensory nerves end in relation to various types of specialized terminals like free nerve endings, Meissner's corpuscles, Pacinian corpuscles and Ruffney's corpuscles. In contrast to the blood vessel, some nerve fibers do penetrate into the deeper part of the epidermis. Apart from the sensory nerves, the skin receives the autonomic nerves that supplies the smooth muscles or in the walls of the blood vessels, the erector pylorium muscle, the myoepithelial cells present in relation to the sweat glands. They also provide a secretomotor supply to the sweat glands. In some regions like nipple and the scrotum, the nerve fibers innervate the smooth muscle which is present in the dermis. Next, we'll see the functions of the skin. The skin provides mechanical protection to the underlying tissue. In this connection, we have noted that the skin is thickest over the area exposed to greatest friction. The skin also acts as a physical barrier against the entry of the microorganism and other substances. However, the skin is not a perfect barrier, and some substances, both useful, that is ointment, and harmful poisons, may enter the body through the skin. The skin prevents loss of water from the body, and the importance of this function is seen in persons who have lost extensive area of the skin through the burns. One important cause of death in such cases is water loss. The pigment present in the epidermis protects the tissue against the harmful effect of the light, especially the ultraviolet light. This is so correlated with the heavier pigmentation of the skin in races living in the tropics and with increase in the pigmentation after exposure to sunlight. However, some degree of exposure to sunlight is essential for the synthesis of vitamin D. The skin offers protection against damage of tissue by chemicals, by heat, and by osmotic influences. The skin is very important sensory organ containing receptors for touch and related sensations. The presence of relatively sparse and short hair over most of the skin increases its sensitivity. The skin plays an important role in regulating the body temperature. The blood flow through the capillaries of the skin can be controlled by numerous arteriovenous anastomosis present in it. In cold weather, the blood flow through the capillaries is kept to be a minimum to prevent the heat loss. In warm weather, the flow is increased to promote cooling. In extreme cold, when some peripheral parts of the body like digits, nose and ears are in danger of being frozen, and the blood flow through these parts increases to keep them warm. In the warm climates, cooling of the body is facilitated by the secretion of the sweat and its evaporation. The sweat glands are also acts as excretory organs.